Classes in session. Hey everybody, and welcome to Unlearn 16 Classes in Session. Guys, listen. Trying to get my mom, this is my mom, Angela Johnson. You guys have seen her in my videos. Don't pretend you don't know who she is. Trying to get her on this podcast has taken some work. And she just stepped up here and said, what'd you say?
Why do I look so horrible?
Guys, in the comments, tell her how good she looks. First of all, you just got a very nice haircut.
I don't need for people just to tell this old lady that she looks good.
Old lady!
When she really doesn't look good.
This is already taking a turn. I like it already.
I look way better downstairs than I looked up here.
You look better downstairs? You think it's the light?
It was darker. I don't want to look like 77.
You don't want to look
77.
70, is that how old you're going to be? 77.
I looked okay at 68.
Listen, you took a bit of a hit. The cancer, you took a bit of a hit. But it didn't knock you out. And is your hair in your eyes there? Is that bugging you?
It's supposed to look like that.
I just pulled a hair off her chin that was like this long. Just so you guys know.
So it's supposed to look neat.
Okay, sorry. I didn't make it look neat. Guys, you're just going to sit here for an hour while we squabble. Remember that time we got caught in Walmart talking bad to each other? And like, oh my God, Unlearn 16. I'm like, oh no.
I know. We learned a long time ago. We can't really say what's on our mind sometimes.
Private. So this chapter, you've read my book, you've read the chapter, and this chapter is all about our relationship, but not so much about just our relationship, but about, I guess, well, the way that I was raised, but the kind of person you were, not just the kind of mother you were. So most of this, I mean, you got separated when I was like 3.
3, yeah. Right?
You're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
All done. Now, you were always friends with Dad.
I was.
He was always in our world. You guys were always,
Did you want to know why I...
Terrified right now. Yeah, sure.
Why? I was at 3.
You can tell these people anything you want.
It was because my little baby Joanna, 3 years old, actually, I was looking out of a window in my kitchen, and the window looked towards the street. And she saw me doing that one day, and she said to me, "Are you mad at Daddy again because he's not home in time?"
Ooh.
That was my decision, because up until then, I didn't understand that I didn't think Joanna clued into anything that was going on in our house. Like, we were both, her dad and I, behaved well in front of her. We didn't really fight in anywhere.
Dad's not a...
He wasn't a fighter. No.
It would be a lot of energy.
But this little 3-year-old had the intuition of knowing that something was wrong. And that's when it was, you know what? I don't want to go. I was there because I thought I was doing good for my daughter, and I wasn't.
Well, that's horrible. So technically, when
it's
the
your
kids
fault.
kids say, I caused my parents' divorce, technically, I kind of did. Okay, so, and by the way, a lot of people think that divorce causes, and all sorts of things cause harm to everybody, but I don't have, funnily enough, just so you know, and I mean, you already know, but I don't have sort of a negative recollection of any of that. Mm-hmm. I think until I was about 12, I thought you guys split up because you liked watching figure skating and Dad liked watching MASH. True story. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember that thought, because obviously at some point, you guys must have said, literally, and this is how big the fight would have been, I want to watch figure skating, the Olympics are on, Dad's like, well, MASH is on, you can watch it. It probably was like that. You don't even recall.
I don't even think we had that kind of conversation. It was something, because you knew he liked MASH, and you knew I liked the Olympics, and you put that together.
You think I just manufactured it?
I think you sensed it.
Interesting. Now, and again, a lot of people, you can talk as openly as you want on here about Dad and your relationship. But when you decided to get a divorce, technically you put it on him.
I did.
You said, so isn't that interesting? You said, if you want to come back, you come back, but you stay and we fix it and we do all these things. If you don't, just don't come back. And he didn't, pretty much.
Actually, right? I gave him a 2-week period. And
he got 2 weeks.
If you're, well, we were separated before that, because after that conversation, you looking at the street or out the window, I said, let's go visit grandma. And so we left.
Side note, Ruby, not happy with this scenario or my dad. Forever. But anyway.
But they did get past it.
Oh, but you know why? Well, they did get past it. They did. And my
Yeah.
grandma had like very soft feelings about my dad. It's just that she knew there was infidelity. That my dad was a nice person. He was never, never yelled, never any
No.
of those things. He was a guy that was unfaithful because we've talked that he was just
Yeah.
looking. My dad, if it at this point, if I could look back, my dad was somebody who he always felt like he was looking for something to make himself happy outside of himself, right? And we don't need to go down that road today necessarily. And grandma was mad that he hurt you and he
Yeah.
broke up our family, and rightly so, as any mom would be. You're the one that did this to my kid. But you kept at her. Like, he was at every Christmas,
Yeah.
every family gathering, whether grandma was there, grandma was
Yeah.
there or not.
Yeah.
He was always invited. He was always there. Ray
And
would
he
come
always
with us.
came. Yeah.
Ray would come with us to his side of the
Mhm,
family, which
mhm.
Ray just absolutely loved. That's not
Well, it
true.
wasn't any fault. It wasn't your fault. You shouldn't have had to suffer any of that. I felt it was bad enough that you had to come from a broken home, and I didn't want that for
home.
you.
That's an interesting word, though, right? A broken home. Because I'm
But
going to
it's
say
really not, because
this.
it fixed it.
That is exactly what I was going to say.
No.
And it didn't just fix that dynamic, but I think, and this is what I want to talk about, in some ways, I don't want to mean that you were broken before, but you've talked about this before.
No.
Like, it kind of fixed you.
Fixed
It kind of gave you a shove.
It did.
So why do you think that was?
I just, before that, I was a very meek, mild young woman, child. Even before at school, I could not speak. It's kind of funny that I have Joanna here that doesn't ever know
Shut
when
up.
to stop. But
You just left all that space open for me.
Yeah, I wasn't like that. I was the exact opposite. Very shy. I hated to be asked a question in school. So that's how I continued in my life. Now, I don't think it was totally your dad. I think it was also that by the time I did separate from him, I was nursing.
Yeah.
And I was becoming comfortable in what I was doing.
Good at it, yeah.
And I knew something more than someone else. And until then, I don't think I really thought that.
I don't think you've ever said that before. So there was an aspect of like gaining not just knowledge, but sort of a capacity. Like, you felt empowered because for the first time, when you say you know something more than somebody else, I think what you probably felt was value.
Yeah.
Like a personal level of esteem.
Myself, yeah.
Maybe you didn't feel from school, or you didn't feel from,
relationships, even any of it.
Yeah.
But I found that I had to do that. I had to, it evolved, but I had to, because I had a little girl, and she was going to have the best life going. And so she needed to have a stronger mom that took care of all that needed to be taken care of.
Do you think you thought that, though, at the time? You
Yeah,
think you
I
thought
did.
that big?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Interesting. So
I thought long and hard about, which is kind of funny, but long and hard about every decision I made with you. Or, like it wasn't spontaneous. One time I spontaneously got angry at you.
Careful, this is PG.
I know, but
Nothing.
Angry at you, and because you were only little, and you ran into the street and a car was coming.
Oh, this is a good story.
I
might have got my butt smacked
after you
just a little bit,
and I brought you back to the house, hand on the bum,
hand
like
on
slapping,
bum. Yeah,
slapping on your bum, holding the other hand. Her
I can
other
just
arm.
envision it. People right now are like, "Oh my
I
god, this
know.
would never happen." But I can just envision the scene and the panic that you would have had,
and
that you would have
what
reacted
it was.
with.
And it, but it, and so yeah, and that was the only time I've ever hit Joanna. And I hated myself for doing it, but I wasn't in control. And so that's when I realized I had to be in control, because even in that kind of a situation, it's not good to smack a child. It's not.
Show them what you do. when I was little. Go on, show them. Show the people.
But this is
Show-
abuse.
It's not. Guys, when I would talk too much, and this is the only thing my mom's ever done to me. Stop that talking right now. That's what she would do. I developed a TMJ dysfunction, I think, because of that. That was it. But that was it. I was never there. But I think being out of control, that's just funny. But I think being out of control, because a lot of parents talk about this. A lot of parents talk about that should be allowed, that shouldn't be allowed, and you just decided that no, because you weren't in control. And the moment you're in control, that's not the go-to way to discipline or teach or inspire your kid. Right? Like if you have a moment where you're calm, cool, and collected about it,
you realize
you're not going, oh, I'm going to go get that,
No, it's, well, that's like I used to discipline you when you were small. Right?
Yeah.
Right, small. And Joanna did some naughty things, the first thing she did, and you had to be in 2 to 3, somewhere in there, because you still slept in your crib with the side down, so you can get in and out, but you were still that small. And you were in having an afternoon nap. And she loved, even then you love going to bed, eh? You like it now. Yeah.
It's true.
And so she'd be up there, and I'd heard her little steps. So I got up. I was in the living room downstairs, and I went upstairs and looked at her, and she was in her bedroom. And I don't know if you guys remember, but you used to be able to get a blush stick. So it was something like this, and you just sort of rubbed it on here. So it looked like a deodorant stick almost, right? And here she was painting the floor under her crib.
I thought you were going to say I put it on my face.
No.
I've never worn makeup a day in my life.
Didn't want to do that.
Didn't want it.
No, and you just were rubbing it on.
I was an artist.
On the carpet.
On the carpet?
The carpet, yeah.
Oh, in my head it was hardwood. No. Of course not.
No, the carpet was white shag. Anyway, and I went in there, and I looked at her, and I said, get out of my sight for a while. Go in your room. I don't want to see you.
But it was in my room.
Oh, well, it was going to, yeah, it was. But no, it was going around to the next room kind of thing. And no more than 5 minutes.
I can't believe I didn't put this story in the book.
She came back to me, and she stood over my shoulders. And don't ask me how she knew this, but she said, I think you can get that out with vinegar.
I should have been given up for adoption.
I just, you know what? A minute of just like awe, and then I laughed. Because
maybe that's why I press so hard on comedy as a source to get me out of trouble.
But that's how you would too if we went to the mall.
Must have been
and you'd lay down on the floor because you'd had enough. And we used like Raggedy Andy.
Exactly.
And
it's a protest technique.
Come on, we gotta go. And you just lay there until I actually had to get down on the floor and sit beside her and laughed. So we just did that, right?
That's so funny. The fact that you didn't, give me away at that point, I guess, is pretty impressive.
Oh, because she was so cute and so lovely.
That was it, eh?
Kind of like the dog.
Kind of. Anybody know Presley? He really is the prize child. Now, from little, and this is something that I think is super important. I do talk from little. You took me to work with you.
I did.
From very little.
Yeah.
I don't know if that should have been allowed.
Well,
like it was a hospital.
Probably
my mom was a nurse forever. And I mean, take me to work, not for a visit when she wasn't on duty.
She'd come with me for the whole day.
But little.
But you were, we did
not
go for a short visit.
Yeah, short visits.
That's when you walked to my manager for the first time.
My first step.
You took your first step. But that would be just a little bit visit. But it started because I used to work nights over New Year's. And so it started where on New Year's night, myself and a friend of mine, the nurse there, brought her daughter. and we put them in jerry chairs. They are now, the chairs that you see all patients in the halls
Like they're
with.
like chairs, like big
Big
recliners, like hospital
recliners,
recliners
yeah.
that you're leaning back in.
And we
I
feed
don't see
them
those
dinner
anymore.
late. Oh, they're still around,
Mm.
but not too many. So we'd give them something to eat, and then put them to bed, and they'd sleep there all night. So that's when that started.
I wonder why I've never liked New Year's.
But you were fine then. You got really. Oh, that's smelling.
Please, that's perfect. This is the perfect. You keep telling the story. I'm just going to get up and shut off her thing. Continue.
But that's when it started, and by then, I mean, you have to have got that I was pretty good friends with my manager, and she let us do that, and it was both of us, so it wasn't just
So this
me.
would have been in the 80s, right? That's what we're talking about right now, right? Because I would have been 5 in 1980.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would have been before
early
that.
80s.
Yeah.
No.
No. But around then.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then it would be there was a day I couldn't get a babysitter, or was having a hard time, and my manager said, "Oh, just bring her in." And so then she started coming in, and you were going in until you were 7, so it was a couple of years in there, right?
Because it was at
we
7
walked to
we
the
moved.
store.
Yeah.
And we go in, and you do rounds with me in the morning, so I'd introduce you to all of my patients. And it was days, I tell you, when I worked on a floor, a 28 bed unit. 15 of those patients were plastic surgery patients, so they could have been burn patients, disfigured people, some nose jobs, some facelifts, so some minor stuff and some not so minor. And then there's 15 of those, and 13 ear, nose, and throat patients. And you had some of those that were tonsillectomies. So we had different kind of people that in the hospital than that you have in now. Like all of that stuff would be going home now.
Day surgery. Yeah. Tonsils in, out you go. Yeah.
But in the middle of all that, we had laryngectomy patients. That's where people have the hole in their throat. Tracheostomies, laryngectomies, facial disfiguration, kind of mashed with the plastics. So there was a lot of noticeable things going on with these patients. And anyway, I'd take Joanna and never hid her from anything. We'd go and she'd meet people. You never really, as a young person, well, even you never really questioned how anyone looked. I don't know that you really did do still.
But I get grossed out? Because now I'll have a pass out.
No.
But I think, the getting nauseous and all that, I really just think it's you. If I'm in an emergent situation, I'm fine.
And it's me getting sick or something.
Yeah, but I can negotiate, right? But as soon as it's not emergent, and it's
like
a
when
problem,
the ambulance is coming,
once the
you
ambulance,
lie
you have to lie on the floor. Yeah. So I would go in these rooms. People would have holes in their throats, and sometimes there'd be, it would be bloody or it would be messy or whatever. And I don't think I reacted too poorly.
No, you didn't at all. I don't know that's. I didn't think that you ever really just noticed that.
Maybe.
That wasn't.
Well, because you were taking me so young, I guess I just thought,
it was, some people looked
some people
way.
had this issue. Yeah, it wasn't like anything. I mean, I don't remember it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no. And it would be the same if we were out too, because you would see other people outside. When I grew up, I don't know if any one of you were around when people that couldn't hear, so deaf people would be outside. You'd be walking in the mall or something, and someone had to come and stand in front of you. And I remember one time saying, "This person's standing," and I was older. What's this person standing in front of me for? And I kind of move away, and they come in again until I sort of looked, and they were holding a little card on sign language.
Oh, to teach you?
Oh. And I remember feeling really bad. Now my mom was with me, who said, "Don't look, don't go." So my mom was like that. That was Grammar Baby, and because she thought it would be upsetting, and that's why that came
to me.
from to you. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I think that I made sure that you didn't respond to people that way.
Well, I think that's what you did though. Like and I don't know. It must have been and it is so subconscious. All of that time that I spent with you at the hospital or you coming home talking about the hospital and talking about like what you've done and what you've gone
Mm-hmm.
through or all of those things, and it made me, it's funny that you said that you got your confidence from having a sense of esteem from what you did and that you did it well, because I honestly believe that my baby confidence, even though, I'm telling you to
Mm-hmm.
paint the floor, I think it came from that.
Yeah.
Watching you
Maybe.
do cool stuff and not just like, I used to think dad typed because he had a typewriter. I saw what you did. Like
Yeah.
it was very crystal clear what you did, the way you did it, the way you connected with people, the way you took, and funnily enough, and as we talk about teaching, the way you educated,
Mm-hmm.
because you always thought, when you talk about that, you always thought that was your job.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, because and I think that's because I knew what I was doing was good. It was excellent work. I cared about all my patients and I wanted to teach other people how to do it my way because it was the best way.
There it is. You wonder where I get my my bravado from? That's it right there. Because and I lived that for such a long period of time. Then we moved up to the store,
Hmm.
right? We bought the store with grandma and grandpa, and we lived up there for a relatively short time, not really that long, like 3 years,
Hmm.
really from grade 3 to grade 6, and then grade 7 we moved back, and you became a
Yeah,
nurse
yeah,
again, right?
yeah, yeah.
Did you miss nursing in that period, or did you just hate
Oh,
all running the store with grandma and grandpa?
no, no, I really miss nursing. I nursing was my career, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I shed tears over my job, and I don't know if a lot of people think that that's a good thing. Um,
Why would hold on? Why wouldn't that be a good thing? You mean because you lost patients, or because it was hard?
because I lost
And
patience.
and you think people would think that's a bad thing? Why would that be a bad thing?
Because you need to be empathetic, not sympathetic.
No, I think it's the opposite. You need to be sympathetic, not
So
empathetic. Meaning you don't need to feel it.
yeah,
I think that's
yeah, yeah.
garbage. I don't. I think that's. I don't believe that at all. Because if you're not letting in sometimes that negative stuff doesn't affect you, then all the great stuff, like people healing and triumphing and going through all of that, doesn't get in either. What a
No,
waste of a
but
job.
I think that that's what is the expectation.
I think it's a bad expectation.
Hmm.
I
Well,
mean,
obviously I did because I didn't do it,
do you think
but I
that,
can.
yeah, I mean, we can't speak to the way that training works now. I just think it's a person.
Oh,
But the more people, like all of the good nurses that I've ever met have empathy.
yeah,
That's what they lead with.
yeah,
And then close behind comes competency and, intelligence.
yeah.
But if you're not leading with empathy in that job, which again, I think directly transfers to how I teach, I don't think you're doing a good job.
But
Same trues
but
for doctors,
maybe
by the
but
way.
maybe that's because that's what you've seen, and you saw it as you thought it was good, and as I thought what I was doing was good.
Sure.
But there are many. It's kind of hard because I totally believe in that. So it's hard to explain why someone that has a degree in English could be a better nurse than someone that doesn't have a degree in English.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about there was a
And
shift
it
in
was this
training for
whole the whole
nurses.
training thing. I trained in the hospital. That's where I was a Wellesley nurse, and forever until they ripped it down. And they trained good nurses. There's still people nurses I know today that are the similar kind of nurses that actually appear to care.
But you can see those regardless of training.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
we
There
spent a
there are,
fair amount of time in hospital
but the
settings.
majority don't care now.
Yeah,
Let's face
but do
it.
you
Like
think the
I was
majority
so
don't?
disappointed in
Oh,
nursing.
listen, that's a whole other. But do you think the majority don't care, or do you think the majority have been forced in a position where they don't necessarily? Although I don't know, Mom. I think you. you had one bad experience when we won't be naming hospitals today, but one bad experience, unfortunately, that kind of lingered. But I will give a shout out. But when we were in that Ajax hospital, when you had a heart rate of 26
And I
and
saved
that
my life.
entire
Yeah.
hospital was in there, and not just that entire hospital, but nurses and doctors that actually you could just see you because then you were taken care of.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think possibly you remembering the bad
Yeah.
more because it was disappointing and because it felt like a letdown for what you put into a profession and then the way that you were treated.
Exactly.
But that's
Exactly.
one hospital. That
Yeah.
was one hospital, unfortunately, in one particular
And a
circumstance.
hospital that is very specialized in certain things,
Yeah.
and you get that special care there. So you go to the hospital so you can get well and get out. There's just the softer skills that I think they've forgotten.
Well, I think, but again, I think some people forget. I don't know if some people are good at them. I don't know
Hmm.
if those soft skills you're talking about, I don't know if you can teach them.
No,
I don't
no.
know if you can teach somebody how to have empathy and how to lead with those soft skills because you said maybe
Mhm.
that's not the way they should be nursing or doctoring. I don't know if that's a word.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the way the healthcare system should work. However, you've just been through hell and back and still, having to struggle with different things. But your mindset, your mindset made a huge difference
Yeah.
for positive or negative. So if that's true, then the soft skills have to matter.
But maybe they matter on the kind of satisfaction that you get out of your job as opposed to anything else.
But if I'm saying like putting you in the right mindset, like Anna telling you to like repeat those things at night,
Yeah.
or you have a moment where you get to be sad and you get to be frustrated and you get to be all of those things, and then we have to shift our mindset a little bit.
Hmm.
If that's true and that helped you heal and that helped you at least forget heal, wrap your head around how to then take another step the next day,
Hmm.
even if it wasn't always, you know, to me, having a healthcare system that has been trained and understands that that's just as important as the chemo, as the immunotherapy, as all of those other
Hmm.
things. Because if your
Hmm.
mindset's not right, like
You're right.
when we sat in that room and they said, they took out your bladder, we thought it was gone, we thought you did the chemo, we got called back in, and she said, well, you have 3 mets in your lungs.
Hmm.
I know for a fact me and you looked at each other and went, well, that's it. That's
Oh
it. We
yeah.
had a moment where we looked at each other and went, if I swore on this, I would say it.
Hmm.
But because that's you knew from your history, I knew from all the House and Grey's Anatomy I watched that once it metastasizes, you're it's like rust on a car, right? Then
But the best thing is, it's not anymore.
well, but this is the thing. In that moment, we didn't know that.
That's
And
right.
I thought I was going to fall apart. I didn't have time to fall apart. I thought you were going to fall apart. And then we talked to the doctor with the immunotherapy guy. And he started talking about it. And what he said to us, and I swear to God, this one, I don't even remember his name. Do you remember his name?
No. I
Damn it.
only ever saw him the once. Actually, he was the respirologist
Dr.
that did.
By the way,
did
her oncologist, Dr. Jiang, I'm going to say her name because she's incredible. Princess Margaret. I wish I could remember his name. He sat down with us after hearing all of this, and they said they're going to try this new thing called immunotherapy, which had only been going on for about 5 years when she started it. And he said, listen, two things. Number one, immunotherapy is doing great things, and what our goal is with immunotherapy is to minimize the any progression. So however big the met was, our goal is just to keep it that way.
Yeah.
So, if it's a centimeter, cool. You can live with a centimeter,
A
tumor
little cancer there
somewhere. You
that's
can live
not.
with it forever. And he
Yeah.
said, people talk about cancer like it's either end of life or you're in remission. And he said the vast majority of cancer is neither. The vast majority, he said, is fighting it in different ways every single day, or maybe not every single day, maybe going into remission, coming out of remission, fighting it this way, maybe surgery, maybe in all of these different things. He goes, and that could be 20, 25, 30 years. He goes, that's the way it's going. And there was a moment that was before it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Just to let you guys know it worked. Before it worked, he changed both of our mindsets then.
You did.
In that moment.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know if that mindset
helped it.
Because she's been in remission for how long?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. And she's like a little bit of a poster child because they keep taking her case everywhere they go saying, look, immunotherapy, remission, because that wasn't.
Well, you missed, remember, because immunotherapy was something to expect every 3 weeks for the rest of my life.
Right. Never stopping.
It was never to stop, and it sort of worked for that period of time. You had to go back for another shot, which is what was no big deal. That was fine to do that. But then all of a sudden, my tumor was getting smaller and smaller and smaller until they really can't see it very much. or they'll mention a node that it's the same as before, whatever that means, right? But I was one of the first people that they actually stopped the immunotherapy because they thought I won't say remission, I won't say cure. They thought it was controlled well enough not to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
what they said. So they stopped every 3 months.
And now every 3 months I still have to have checkups, etc.
Now it's every 4 months.
Now they've moved it to 4 months.
Right.
And I think probably she would have moved it to more than that, but she could hear the tenseness in my voice when they were going to back off a little bit because you get pretty dependent on going in there every 3 months
and getting it checked. Yeah.
Although it's a hard week, but other than that, it gives you the rest of that time, right?
But I think all of that, it's funny because really before that, our family hasn't really never really experienced cancer and never really gone through, Grandpa passed when I was younger, but we'd never gone through significant, Grandma lasted till 97, smoking every day, drinking coffee and eating straight up sugar. So
what did they call her? She
had superior genetics.
Yeah, superior genetics.
We call her Wolverine.
So we all thought we had it.
Yeah,
until I got sick.
We all thought,
I think that was
ours. Maybe I got it.
I think you got it.
Skip a generation. Well, but
maybe it's got to do with talking so much.
I get it out. But it's interesting because I think it has a lot to do with stress. A lot of people talk about how much stress impacts, right?
Yeah.
And you've always been, let's be honest, a little bit of a worrier. I actually think, isn't that so weird? You going through this has minimized how you worry about things.
Yeah,
and could try to control other things. You don't do that
I'm not as
anymore.
Controlling as I was.
No.
In anything.
No.
Because you can't.
Well, you have to let go of it. But I think you also realize all of that control was actually useless anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Probably
you know what I mean?
Harmful. Right.
It was always like,
I
could never control everything I was doing anyways.
Right.
So all of this being said, I sort of skipped to, being a teacher. And there were lessons that you taught me from this that I think that I didn't even know I learned. Number one, I never make a kid read out loud. Never in 23 years have I ever asked a kid to read out loud. Now, what I do make them do sometimes
is answer a question.
They do have to answer a question, but I think your problem wasn't that you didn't want to read out loud. It wasn't that you didn't want to answer the question. It's you thought you weren't smart enough, good enough, capable enough.
Yeah.
So I think instead of just like abdicating and say, oh, you never have to read out loud or you never have to, I sort of err on the side of like gassing them up, like making them feel a level of confidence and empowerment in whatever.
Yeah.
So that they'll answer a question, so that they will give it a go, so that if they read and they stink at it, oh well.
You learn that early too. And you taught yourself that, Joanna. I don't know where you get it. The apple orchard.
Well, that was that was a level of confidence. You can tell that story, but that was a level of confidence that I got that from you. I didn't have that. I got that from you. I got that from a
Well,
mom who said
okay,
a 2-year-old gets to have an opinion when grandma would say, "Who do you
true.
think the mother is here?"
That's
Right?
true. That's true.
That's
Yeah.
where I got that
Well, I
from.
guess you did get it from the fact that, yeah,
You're not just
you
born
would have
with it.
felt at any age that it was important what you had to say.
You can tell the apple orchard story.
The
I didn't
apple
put that in the
oranges.
book. What
Oh,
happened?
it was very cute because Joanna used to want me to go to school to meet her teachers. I never missed a parent night
Just lean this way.
or any or any kind of outing. I was a nurse, so I could change my schedules around a bit. So I could do that. But one time, one of the first times, and you were in regular school, so you had to be in grade 1 or 2 because it was in
Markham.
Markham, and we went to the apple orchard, and there I found this little girl who had her hand up all the time. She wanted to answer every single question. And the interesting part is she wanted to answer it even if she didn't know.
I didn't know any answers. Did I know
Like she'd
one?
put her, and it wouldn't be just to put your hand up, it'd be pick me, right? And oh yeah, you would answer some of them. I mean, obviously the teacher knew you, right?
Right.
So she wouldn't ask you she'd try and get some other people involved because it could have been just a one-on show. Um, and you'd have some answers, but then it started where I noticed you put your hand up the same way, and when the teacher asked you, okay, what's the answer, you'd go, I don't know, and that was all you wanted. But you wanted to be heard. You wanted people to know that you didn't know, or you did know. It did
It's
not
so
matter. It's
weird. I
weird.
just wanted to be called on.
Well, and it was around the same time we had the big sex talk at home because you and your two girlfriends were playing
Not
Barbies.
just yes, and they came over and they wanted to. They made a joke to me and they said, you know, you don't know what sex is or whatever. And then I said, well, fine, I don't know. But I stomped home and asked mom, and then mom had to give a call to all their parents and say, listen, my daughter's asked this question. I'm going to answer it. Do you want me to send your kids home? And these other parents are like, no, you're the nurse. Please go ahead and give the talk. There was never a sense of embarrassment.
No.
I've never felt a sense of embarrassment asking you a question or trepidation asking a question. But again, that has to be something. Do you think it was because like you were embarrassed to ask questions? You just wanted to make sure that do you think it was conscious? You know what I mean? Like you brought me into, I was an only child, so
Yeah.
I was the only kid in the family,
Mhm.
well, for a long time, and almost till I was like 9 years old. So growing up, I just always had the ear of a full room of adults,
Exactly.
no matter where I went,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I was never playing with other kids. I mean, my friends, but
Mhm.
for the most part, I sat at the adult. There was no kids table,
No.
metaphorically or literally.
That's right.
So, and I always felt like you always made it seem like I got to have a say and my say had value.
Hmm. Well, and I thought it did.
Well, but that's the difference. That's the
Well, see,
difference. If I'm
everything
wrong or not,
starts.
it doesn't matter. I just now have a big mouth.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I started letting you have an opinion. You always had an opinion, I think, but listening to your opinion over, I'm sort of skipping back. Over cleaning. Oh, not cleaning, disciplining. Because
Oh, this is a great strategy. By the way, I use this strategy. I used this
for school.
strategy just last week. Go ahead, tell the story because it's funny. Again, it's about how I take what you've done and I just keep applying it to all these other children. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, because I was a single parent, so I didn't have someone else. And this is probably the only thing I did miss having two parents
To
at
bad
home
ideas off of maybe.
to really talk about what you should be doing about punishing for certain things. So it was always me. Well, I wasn't always reasonable, because it would be go away and I'll talk to you later. And if it wasn't that, it would be, okay, so you go in your room, you don't look at any toy in there, heaven forbid. You don't
I
reach,
just
don't put a
remember.
TV on, although you didn't have a
No
TV
TV in
in
my
your room.
room.
You don't do anything, but you go in that room and you think about stuff. And you, by the way, you're
You
not
think
playing
about
with
it.
your friends for 2 weeks and you're not going out.
That never lasted. I don't
Well,
ever remember you not letting me
because
go
it's a
anywhere.
silly thing, right?
Right.
So I'd send you off, and then I started to realize, well, I'm not going to do any of that. I
Yeah, that's
sound like a
This is a great.
crazy woman
Yeah,
telling you
yeah, yeah,
all, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I'd call you back, and I would say that, and this is something that I think I taught you, or I hope I did, is that I admitted I was wrong to my child.
Ooh.
So it's kind of nice that if your child understands that they can admit that and it's not the end of the
Mm,
world.
yeah.
um but I would say, like, that was a little crazy because I was upset, but you did do something wrong there, so we need to fix it so it's not going to be happening again. And so we sat and we sort of talked a little bit, and I go, well, what do you think your punishment should be? And she said, I can vacuum. Well, that was the best
That's the
punishment
worst thing I've
in
ever
the
said, guys. I
world.
spent my whole
I
life
still would give a
vacuuming.
vacuum. And what I
I could
thought was
vacuum.
awesome.
I might have been 4 or 5 years
Yeah, it
old.
didn't matter, and
Vacuum.
I would never go over
By the way,
it.
a vacuum in 1980 weighed 417 pounds, just so we know.
And you would
On a
do
shag
it.
carpet, nonetheless.
And I would say to you, okay, I've hidden 4 pennies on the floor. I want you're finished your work when those 4 pennies, you found the pennies, because they're
It's
in
just called corporal
situations.
punishment nowadays.
I think I think that's still a good punishment.
Yeah.
Anyway, and she'd give me the pennies, and it was not long ago, and that's from then on. Joanna got to clean for punishment, which, until she was really older. But I didn't ever believe you had to not play with your friends, because when you're a kid, that's when you're supposed to play with your friends, for crying out loud. Like, why would I punish you and punish me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's stupidness.
Like, this is one of the most brilliant things that I've tried to, and very recently, funnily enough,
Mhm.
tried with a student.
Did you?
So last week,
You didn't tell me.
yeah, it's funny because she was so baffled last week. I'm not gonna talk about who it was, but a student stepped out of line a little bit, made a couple bad choices, and she knew I was upset, so she came to me and she's like, well, obviously I'm gonna have detention, or I can't go for whatever she thought my punishment. I said, you know what? I go, you know how upset I am, and how disappointed. I said, you know how upset I am, and she she said, I know you're disappointed, which is like it's like an arrow to their tiny little hearts. But I said, she goes, well, what's my punishment? And I said, I don't know. She's like, what do you mean you don't know? I go, I want you to know this is serious. I want you to know this has weight. So what I'm not going to give you a punishment right now. I want you to go home tonight and I want you to think about what it should be. Her face, she was like, I can't just know now. I just want to know now. She's like, I'll give you my phone. I'll do this. I won't go to lunch. I'm like, your punishment's not eating. That doesn't make any sense. And she's going on, and I said, no. I want you to think about it. And I want you to show up in my office tomorrow morning. Tell me the conclusions you came. And she was out of her mind. First thing in the morning, she came to me. She was dead serious. We discussed, and to be honest, I didn't even need to give her a punishment by that point, because she spent the last 12 hours
punishing yourself,
thinking about it and contemplating it and understanding it. And I'm like, and she came and she had, because you can tell when kids give a crap, right?
Yeah.
When they really are sorry and they get it, and otherwise when they're just saying sorry because they want to move on, right? And after having the conversation in the morning, she's like, so what's my, oh, she said consequence, because I kept trying to reinforce the fact that punishment's weird. Consequence means that you do something that's out of pocket, there has to be a related consequence. It can't be like, you skip class and I take away your lunch. That doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
There's no connect. And we had a half-hour conversation. And at the end of it, she goes, okay, so, she came up with some decent consequences kind of thing. And she goes, which one are you going to choose? And I said, none of them. She goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you spent the last 12 hours really thinking about what happened, that you made a mistake and you know it.
Mhm.
That was it. And she, it was one of those, and that's brand new. I don't know.
Mhm.
Historically, I don't think I've been that great with that, because you get another thing you told me always: never put a kid in a position to lie.
Yeah.
I hate it when kids lie to me.
Yeah.
Hate it. And I'll say to them, listen, don't do an assignment. Okay. There'll be a consequence. But if you lie about it,
Yeah.
it breaks everything. But having a space where kids don't lie, but there's still consequence, if you can do that as a parent or as a
Mhm.
teacher, I think that's the best thing you possibly can do.
Well, I got that from Grandpa, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That was the one thing I remember. He just, don't ever put your child in a position to lie, because they will.
To protect themselves,
Yeah,
to avoid getting in trouble,
Yeah.
right? So anytime
And it makes it worse.
I
right?
have done that with students. So anytime I know they've done something wrong, I don't ask them if they've done it. They're
Mhm.
gonna say no. I say,
It's Grandpa's hat.
it is Grandpa's hat. I say, I know you've done it. I know this has happened. Let's not waste time
Mhm.
back and forth.
Yeah.
Let's just carry on with what happens next. It works better with some kids than others. Some kids will still want to deny it happens, but for the most part, they usually go, okay. They know that's how I'm going to lead, right?
Mhm.
But consequence is hard. Consequence and follow through is very, very, very hard. You're lucky you had such a good kid that
I
didn't
know.
really need any consequence.
How I knew if you were almost going to lie. One time you had,
Almost gonna lie.
they free, not free, yes, freezies are the ones that are in the plastic
Yeah.
bag, right? Yeah. I was doing something and came out, and you were playing with your friends, and you had about 8 people in the front lawn running all around, and there were freezy packages on the ground. and
Because
and
I went
I
into the fridge and got them.
uh
Oh,
and so
I was sharing.
instead of saying, where did they come
Yeah.
from?
Yeah, don't put me in the spot. Where did they come from? I don't know. Some guy in a truck just dropped off a bunch
Yeah,
of freezies.
it was Joanna. Look at all these freezies, and you didn't have to feed the whole street.
Well, that seemed nice, though.
But
I don't know if that was.
that's fine. So I suggest that you, not your friends, pick up every one of those packages and you put them in the garbage. That was as simple as that. And that was
More
the
cleaning.
first time. Yeah, more cleaning. That was the first time that I thought um, that it could have gone wrong. If I'd have said to you, where did these things come from? I don't know. It would be like that cartoon.
I kind of want to know what the lie would have been.
Well, I don't know. It would have been I don't know. I didn't do it. You remember that little cartoon that it was, I didn't, oh, family something or other?
I don't
Anyway, it
remember.
doesn't matter.
To end this, I do want to talk about one parenting drop that you made, but it is funny story to tell at the end. Look, I grew up in the 70s, early 80s. Parents didn't know you didn't know where we
Oh.
were. We were out
Oh
of the
my
house.
God.
Like, we could walk up to the little park, right? We were out of sight. It wasn't like play in the backyard. We played in the front yard. We rode our bikes places, right?
Uh-huh.
And this one time, so my friend and I, Greg, we were outside and we're playing, and we come back in the house, and I tell my mom that I'm going to be on TV. Now, guys, I'm wondering if this was always my desire was to always be on TV.
Bravo.
I love TV. We always had the TV on, whatever. Anyways, I come in and I said, I'm going to be on TV. And Mom goes, what are you talking about? There was a news truck, I said, out front of the house. And they invited us in their truck. Their white panel van with all of this, like, in my memory, like technological stuff in it. And the two men that were driving this truck invited Greg and I into the truck.
Yeah.
And I guess pretended to film us at some point. I don't remember that. But we got in their truck. We were fully in the back, two kids of a panel van truck. And I went in and I told Mom all about this. And my mom then proceeded to call like all of these different news agencies to find out if they had a truck in our vicinity. None of them did. So to this day, I mean, that could have been a really interesting end.
I think we did.
I think it might have been was it like a Roger, like a cable truck,
a cable or an electrical thing? Because I think that's what someone eventually did say. There's one of these kind of trucks in your area. Because I called
like somebody
everywhere.
that you called.
Yeah. But it wasn't that day. It would have been later. You know what I mean?
Guys, that would have been it
scary.
in 1980. But it was scary way after the fact. But nobody watched their kids.
Joanna, the times that we'd go shopping and I couldn't find you because you were in the shoe store.
Guys,
like I would look for you and I'd find you.
At least you knew where to go.
But and it was always a shoe store.
See, there you go. But at least I'm consistent.
But how I did that, like anything could have happened to you, but we did not even think about it. And the park business, before we left,
park was far.
Before
I could go to the big park. That was at 7. That was down a major street.
That's right.
To the big park.
Yeah.
Big park and little park. I should go and take some video there.
And you used to be able to, you had just started, so you were 7 years old, and you must have just been 7, because we moved before you got to be 8. So your birthday's in July, right? And, no, it could have been the beginning, whatever. Anyway, we were also allowed to go to the store behind us by yourself. That was a brand new
convenience store. Guys, listen, the convenient, and we used to hop the fence. One time I tried to hop that fence in my bare feet, slid all the way down, and got slivers all in my hands and my bare feet, and Ray had to take them out. But I'm going to have Ray on the podcast, so you're gonna get to talk to him about that. Can you give the people your best piece of parenting advice? One thing. If you had to say one thing to parents, somebody's going to have kids, what would be the one thing you would say, listen, everything else you're going to decide, but this, if you could do this one thing, what would it be?
Make them know that they are loved.
That's it.
That they are loved, and they come first.
And on that note, guys, thank you so much. Look at this. Long time coming. You've been talking for 53 minutes.
Oh my God.
Was it okay? Are you all right? It was fun?
I'm good.
Maybe part 2 later if they like it?
Oh, you don't need to be crazy.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Go check the rest of my podcasts as they relate to each chapter on my book. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Dismissed.